In our pre-podcast talk, I recall you were talking about different activities to activate those areas of the brain. Can you
Yeah.
just put some light on those activities?
Yeah. So the first thing is it's activity plus the intentionality of the activity,
Okay.
right? So one of the main things that you want to do is to find some kind of motor skill that does not require a lot, which is a very repetitive action. Okay, so something like gardening, something like coloring. Uh, Earlier on, in when our grandmothers and all of them would work in the kitchen, they would knead dough for long periods of time. Like even before that, people who would go and farm outside, cutting the grass or doing some kind of repetitive hand activity is something that takes the focus away from your immediate processing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it puts you into a semi meditative zone almost. So what happens when you do this is that one is repeated hand movements lead to the release of oxytocin. So there is a lot of relaxing, there's a lot of happiness, there's a lot of soothing that occurs when you do this. The second thing that happens is that because you are not directly using your frontal lobe, it gets a lot of space to process things that have happened throughout the day. So essentially what you're seeing is an overload of the frontal lobe, whereas people are not getting enough time to process the traumatic events that they've undergone, traumatic, semi traumatic events. When you start to do this, what will end up happening is that your brain actually, your frontal lobe actually gets a little bit of time to sit and process these
Mm.
incidences that have occurred,
Mm-hmm.
and it frees up space. So you will find that you automatically de-stress and you become calmer, right? If you do not do this, if you do not find space to do this, it will start doing it in your sleep. That is why people start to complain about disturbed sleep, heightened activity, heightened thoughts in the bedtime, because that is the time where your frontal lobe has enough time to sit and go through and work through whatever has happened throughout the day. And one of the ways it processes it is through dreams. So people speak about a lot of uncomfortable dreams or very vivid dreams in the night. So instead of distracting yourself by even more intellectual activity, which by scrolling or playing a video game or texting, which is again very focused, you want to do something that is very mechanical. So that is something that can really help out. And easiest another way which you can incorporate this, which is easy for you also, is to exercise, yoga, pilates, some kind of gymming. So it's a very similar thing. Plus, you are hitting two birds with one stone, where your physical health is also getting
Right.
is getting help. Plus, the fact that you doing this kind of mechanical activity allows you to start decompressing on a mental plane. Plus, when you exercise, you know that there is a release of endorphins. You tend to become far more capable of handling stress than you would. So, exercising is a great alternative. So, if you can start doing these things slowly, so if you can dedicate half an hour a day to this kind of activity, I think you would find yourself de-stressing a lot more. The second thing is some kind of creative process which you enjoy. So singing, dancing, drama, you know, people talk about reading, but I would not recommend that as for this particular thing. But again, creativity is again a different quadrant of your brain. And one thing that happens is there's also a factor of enjoyment that comes in, and that is again something that allows de-stressing to happen very strongly. That was one of the things that we used to do when we were playing, right? We came up with our own games, we came up with our own stories, like chore police. Maybe you would kind of have a story of who the chore was, what the background was, and all of that. So that really helped you build those creative juices, and that kind of outlet is something that keeps you de-stressed significantly. So essentially what you're trying to do is like build a smaller imaginary world for you to live in for like maybe half an hour in the day. If you can, it will really help you compensate for what you go through on a day-to-day basis then.